All right, hey guys, thanks for watching. This is our new Milestone 386BH, and we just bought this. We're pretty happy we have it. There are some pros and cons with it, and before we bought it, I noticed that there were a lot of review videos out there, but there wasn't really much in the way of like pros and cons. So I thought I'd put a video up about like real world impressions, just some things to be aware of. This is a $50K price point camper and you get a lot of fifth wheel for that, but there are also some corners cut. So I thought I'd walk through and just kind of talk about some of our impressions and things we've had to deal with and some projects we've already done, some projects we're doing, and so on. So first, I'm just going to start on the outside here, and you can see it's a really nice decorating job. It is not a full body paint, but it sure feels like one. It's a great looking camper. You know, it's very modern. You know, you can see me in the row with all the other campers in my storage facility, and you've got all the browns and beiges and everything else. And this is kind of a nice cream or an off-white and blue. And we just really love the color scheme. That said, there are some negatives right away. Now, if we come down here, you can see we have Trailer King RST tires in here. And these are almost universally despised by everybody that I've ever talked to. I have not actually had trouble with these tires yet, but it's a matter of time. It is a first thing that we're going to replace with the Salins. I don't know how to pronounce it, but we are going to be changing these tires up here. I'm just putting a few more miles on it. But I mean, there are stories about people that are lucky to get their campers home. So that was kind of a negative for us. There's some other things that you'll start to see here and there. This camper is not dirty. This camper is damaged. Like already right out of the factory, whatever travel this thing had getting it to where we picked it up in Knoxville, Tennessee, it's already starting to get some road rash. And that is, yeah, you're talking about 3 weeks ago. So this is not an old camper. This wasn't something that kind of happened over a period of time. That was just kind of, you know, maybe a little bit of a low-end paint job already starting to rub off. And I'll start calling out more details like that. You'll see what I mean. So in no particular order, I'm just going to work my way around. The second problem we had is that valve there says gray tank number 1, right? Well, there's another mystery valve down here. Want to take a guess what that is? Well, actually, you can't really see it under this chassis here, but both the front shower, the master bedroom sink and shower, and the master toilet are on the same dump pipe. Now, that's not super surprising. You wouldn't expect, like, separate dump pipes, except there's a valve that says gray tank 1. There's actually no valve to shut off and on black tank 1. Now, wrap your head around this for a second. You can't shut your black tank off. There is a valve down here, past that flickering piece of tape, another little shabby corner there. Just some packing tape left on it or whatever. But that valve that we're looking at here is the black tank dump. So the problem is that as soon as you open that, the black tank's dumping out of here. And what that means is that there is no valve here where you can isolate and just dump the gray. To dump the gray, you have to dump the black because that's the black tank valve. Now, you wouldn't think that's such a huge deal. I mean, after all, usually you want to dump them both, right? Well, there are actually some places you can camp, and we've been to a few of those, like Lake McConaughey in Nebraska, where you're allowed to dump your gray, but not your black, on the ground. And that's actually more common than you think. Like, if you spend a lot of time in COAs, you're not going to see much of that. But if you do spend your time traveling quite a bit, there will be some places where you're dispersed camping or in your state campgrounds, and they allow you to dump the gray. Unless you have this valve. Because if you have this, you can't physically dump this gray without opening that valve, and that means you have no option to just dump the gray up front. So you could run out of shower capacity pretty quick, and it is something to think about. A couple of other little rough edges here we're going to see under the chassis. You're already seeing some chassis rust, and that's kind of all over the place. I think they don't actually make these chassis. They buy them, and they probably sit out in a yard somewhere. There's a lot of sealing. It's not very thorough. So there's some nice insulation there, and no insulation here. Another hole back there, kind of you can see in the middle where there's no insulation, kind of up where my finger's kind of pointing here. There's just a lot of that, where some holes are insulated and some holes are not. So I'm going to have to go through and figure out what some of these things are. There's no diagram of what these ports are. So I don't know what those dump ports are. I mean, we know they're dump ports, but no telling where they go. Little mystery pipe up here, no telling where that goes. Might be for hydraulics, no way to tell. I mean, that's a plastic fitting, so no way is that hydraulics. This thing is plumbed for hydraulic landing gear. It does not come with hydraulic landing gear. As we get around to the other side, that's a little bit of a joke I'll show you. Okay, so standard furnace, you're basically getting what a simple travel trailer would have. So it's kind of like the smaller furnace units and the small 6-gallon hot water heater. We do run out of hot water. Quick fix for that, if you buy any camper, is get the Oxygenic shower head. Those work great. They save a lot of water, and your hot water heater will last a lot longer. Storage is very, very limited. So a couple of things. First of all, I've come to hate this door. It is right at head height. I smash my head into here every time I go under. Do not understand why they couldn't make this go a little higher. And I've actually thought about maybe, putting some longer gas struts on it so that it would. It's kind of typical flimsy door. There's actually a reason why these doors are flimsy. It's because this hinge allows them to be removed. If you ever need to service the door or work in the bay without the door getting in your way, you can take this screw out and the one at the other end, and the door will actually slide out of that hinge there, which is actually kind of nice. Does have a wet bay. The wet bay, you can see, oops, I left one of my caps off. Does have a city water connection and 2 mystery ports. Still haven't figured out what they are. You would think they would be black tank flushes, except I hooked a hose up to them the last time we dumped, and no water flowed through them. Even at 35 PSI. So I have to trace out where those go. There may be a valve that was closed in the factory and not opened up here. I'm not sure. It's got a nice little light up here. Light's mounted upside down, so this cap keeps falling off. Thanks a lot. It's got a removable hose here. I have not actually been able to get that hose off since putting it on, so I don't know what the point is. If I pop this open, the wet bay has a nice plug in here so that you don't need to leave your door open when you have your hoses running up. The problem is, then you've got a great big gaping hole in here. I don't understand why they made that quite so large. One of the things we're considering is either cutting out of a piece of foam or maybe 3D printing a plug that has a notch in it for the fresh water hose. That's typically what's running up in here when you're hooked up. And that way, you're not getting like animals or insects or anything like that up through here, because otherwise the only option you have when that fresh hose is in there is to just kind of leave it in there slanted. And it just kind of sits like this, and that's kind of a big hole to leave open. So not too thrilled with that. Storage is extremely limited, and I apologize for how messy this bay is, but I mean, look at how narrow that is. That is your only under chassis storage bay. So this is like smaller than the last travel trailer we had. The width on this thing is just incredibly narrow. You can see my tools and my water hose stuffed in here. And actually, I'm kind of glad I left it this way because it gives you some perspective. But that is, I think, one of the bigger challenges with this is that you're talking about a trailer that's built for families, and the storage is just very, very tight. Now, it's not all cons, but I'm just focused on the cons because there are plenty of other pro review videos. Couple of weird little things, like it's got these accessibility panels here and here. I can post some photos later or maybe put them in a photo album in the description, but I pulled that panel off and found some interesting surprises back behind here in terms of both the plumbing and also like electrical items that weren't even hooked up. So there is a 120 volt outlet that I believe was meant to go to the dinette. We'll look at it in a minute. And it's not hooked up to anything. It's just lying there on the floor. So definitely explore your new camper. You get some of these cheaper ones, and every now and then you find something wasn't hooked up. So that's all about this. I'm going to close this up here. One other thing that I did do, and this is not just a Milestone complaint. Every new camper comes with this. That famous CH712 key that you could walk around a campground and open every camper's doors out there. I've been working my way around the camper, replacing all of those keys with these cylinder locks, the tubular cam locks. And you can get these on Amazon or eBay. You have a ton of options out there for where you get them from, so I'm not going to worry too much about explaining that. I'll probably make a couple of follow-up videos talking about the mods that we've made, so I won't focus on those here. Now, you'll notice there was no lock to open up the propane bay. That was not an accident. My understanding is that for safety reasons, they want propane to always be accessible, and that's also why it's an open floor here. This isn't an insulated bay, but that's okay. These are 30-gallon cylinders. excuse me, 30-pound cylinders. Boy, that would be something, wouldn't it? And you can see there is an auto changeover valve up here, and this is just the same auto changeover valve every camper in the world I've ever seen has. These things fail after a few years, and you have to replace them, but that's kind of life. So I'm going to close this up here. Another example of chassis whatever. Take a look at this. So that's the Lippert quick release pin, and man, look at how corroded that is. That's been sitting out on some yard for a couple of years. This is a brand new camper, this 2021 camper. So it hasn't been out on a lot anywhere. This is just kind of what it looked like and how it was delivered to us. So I've actually bought a replacement set of those, and one of my projects next camping trip is to replace it. You obviously can't do it while you're down on the landing gear. And you can see I'm also in process, and I had this in the bay, of putting on the stabilizer arms here. Definitely recommend those, especially for a long fifth wheel, which this is, a very, very long camper. And it definitely rocks in high winds, or if you're walking around in the front. Now, I'm sorry I didn't have a clean bay here, so that it's a little hard to show you. They don't tell you this in any of the videos, but this is prepped for a generator. You can't find that listed on any sheet anywhere, and 2 separate dealers insisted to us that it is not. But I swear to you, that is the exact cutout. This one, and but back behind here, there's another set of cutouts that go all the way back. But that is the cutout for a built-in generator. Now, we don't plan to install one because I'm going to be putting in a very large solar system. You can see I'm just starting to get into that now. So I don't really have any plans to do that. We do have a small gas generator we bring when we need some backup power if we're dispersed camping. And I'm just going to throw that in the back of the truck, or maybe on a back cargo carrier. I'll show you the hitch in a minute. Just because, you know, for our needs, that's fine, and I don't need to drop $4,000 on a generator. Now, interesting thing, before I get into more details of this compartment, let's go and look at a joke. So, hydraulic landing gear. Hydraulic landing gear is faster and stronger. 2.5 times faster than electric gear, right? Hydraulic landing gear is great. But you don't have it. So just to be clear, hydraulic landing gear is great, but you don't have it. So this is electric, that's electric, and the stabilizer and rear jacks are also electric. So just be aware of that. You'll get this. You'll see that label. You may see that in review videos. These are not hydraulic landing gear. The one way that you can tell is if you're looking at photos, the front landing gear often will be this round tube rather than that style, because they will retract all the way. They don't have this kind of quick release pin that Lippert uses on the electric gear. So just, I mean, they're not universal. There are some differences between products, but that can be a way that you can tell. My experience has been, dealers have no idea what is in these units. They get a build sheet. It's got like Alpine kit, and they don't know what's in Alpine kit. So a lot of times they will not be able to tell you what happens and what goes into those kits. One thing that has been nice is the Rotaflex, and I am going to just focus on this for 1 minute because this was a common question that I got. So just before we get into the rest of the camper, let's go take a look at my truck. So I am towing this with a Ram 2500 Mega Cab. Now, the Mega Cab is a very long wheelbase version of the Ram. You can see that in addition to a much oversized rear door, it has space behind the rear door. And that is amazing because in the Ram, that means I can fold my seats down, and you can see my messy truck here because I have projects that I'm working on tonight, but I have a ton of storage space back here. And that's really nice because the second you put a fifth wheel hitch into the bed of a truck, you lose most of your cargo space. And you can see that this is a 6.5-foot bed. Now, one thing I do have to say about this Milestone, it has a very, very sharply curved front cap. If you look where this hitch sits, you can see I've got a slider, so I can move my hitch back a foot. And I've got this back flip here, this front thing. If I have, this is the back flip, I think it's the X4, I forget. It's the aluminum one, the roll-up aluminum one. If you have that on this truck, and you have the Curt, I believe it's the A16 hitch, and its base, so this is the Ram, and you can see Ram has a special base that this thing sits in. Now, I have a slider. You do not need the slider. That hitch sits exactly right to sit under the rails with this back flip folded down. Very low profile rails. I don't have the trailer mounted, but I've got about 2.5 inches of airspace above these rails underneath the front of that trailer. And I can jack this at 90 degrees and not hit. Maybe 87 degrees. It's very, very tight. So one of the things that I have come to really appreciate is that although I bought a sliding hitch just in case, I haven't actually needed it. The height was fine. If you look, I've got my Rotaflex. This was my question. None of the dealers could answer it. They all said I'd be fine, but you can see these are adjustable. I have the Rotaflex set at the highest position. And if you do that, and you've got the same truck setup that I have, or at least something roughly equivalent. I think my bed is at 39 inches off the ground. The Ram's a pretty tall vehicle in the 2021 year. Then you will be able to tow this level with no adjustments. And because this front cap is so sharply curved, you can jack it to almost 90 degrees without even using a slider. So just keep that in mind. That's an option for you, and you may want to know. Now, a couple of things that I've been working on here. First of all, there is an inverter already installed on the tiniest panel I have ever seen a manufacturer installed. I mean, it's 20 watts. Why even bother, guys? I mean, I could put a couple of 9 volts on a charger and produce more than that thing does. I don't understand the purpose behind doing that, and the wiring is so small, you can't really upgrade it. It's like 16 to 18 gauge wire. So I don't know what was going on inside their heads here, but a couple of things you do want to be aware of. One is that it does come with one house battery, and you can see I'm in the process of adding a battery here, so I have to get my boxes expanded. It's got a battery shutoff switch. It's got a shutoff switch for the inverter. That is a fuse for the inverter, an A&L style fuse mount. And one thing to be aware of, my dealer, or the factory, I'm not sure, did not have a fuse installed in the wire. So confusingly, a lot of their wires use these new style fittings. And I actually like these. I forgot the name of them, but you can buy these things online. They are great. I buy cases of them because I use them so much. I don't know why I can't think of the name of them. They're very quick and very positive connection fittings, gas tight. So I love using these things, but look what they did. So it's the chassis wire for the solar charger. This is the solar charger, is black with a white stripe. We'll see that in a minute. They changed it to orange here for reasons unknown. Probably the fuse holder just came that way. Well, if you want to hook your solar system up to do your battery, you got to have a fuse in here. Mine did not come with a fuse. The whole thing was wired. There was no fuse. And this is just like typical sloppy, like stuff getting put together. But be aware of that. If you ever have something that's not working, check to make sure you got fuses in your fuse holders, especially if your camper's brand new. Another problem that I had was that my right mid stabilizer jack did not work. And the reason was this wire here was not plugged in. The wire had been run under the belly to about here, and you can see it's still a little flexed where I had to kind of pull it down and get my fingers under there, and with a flashlight and everything, fish it back and fish it all the way through and out this hole here to be able to wire that up. So that was kind of a little frustrating point there. I feel like the dealer should have at least picked up on that because, you know, the stabilizer jacks weren't working, but they were, I think it was 2,000 miles from where we lived to get the camper that we wanted. And we had zero time to be able to walk through it. So there's actually some damage you'll see in a little bit, and we had to kind of deal with that. So, you know, little bits and pieces, just kind of be aware. You know, there may be some rough edges. Other than that, there is actually an awful lot of room in here. I will be putting in a solar installation. Probably be upsizing this board here, but it's not too bad. I'm going to put an EP-Ever solar charge controller and some other pieces like that in here, and about 1,000 watts of solar capacity on the roof with some Renogy smart batteries. And I think I've got plenty of room for it. So you got a lot of headspace in here. All right, coming further back. So this is just another propane tank. You can see it's open and, you know, no security there, but you really can't. And then let's take a look at the storage. Now, The storage is a little bit wider on this side. You have the same problem with the head, so I have to duck down to be able to get in here. And the only other problem is that it's actually very difficult to get to this light. It's kind of mounted really far back, and there's no, give me a second here to rearrange. There's no real good way to reach that. So you kind of have to tuck yourself in, and then you can see there's the solar charge controller. It's just a little low end, kind of a $70 unit. You can find these things on Amazon for a little less than that even. And, it does what it does, just not very much of it. There is some more access to wiring up here. If you drop that panel, I haven't been in there yet, and you'll see there are a few vents in some spots. This has what they call basement heating, or a heated basement, which basically means they stuffed a really small hose down into a couple of select spots, and they're hoping that that'll be heated enough. I think that this furnace is probably not big enough to really provide significant heating down there, and if you do any camping in the winter, you're almost certainly going to want to upgrade the heating so that you have actual tank heaters. Now, this is a messy compartment, but I'm glad I'm showing it this way. There is a storage bay on the side here, and this is actually a perfect place for a grill, which is really nice because the grill they include with it is pretty much garbage. So if you're used to big outdoor kitchens, this is not the camper for you. But you can fit, this is the Weber kind of portable gas grill. These things are great. They come with a hose. You can hook them up to a 20-pound cylinder, or you can run them off one of the little green bottles. They're pretty compact. It looks a little messy because I have the stand in here, but the whole thing just barely fits in here, and so that actually works out pretty perfectly for our needs. One other weird thing before I walk back. You'll notice two things. Some doors have magnets. This one's magnetic. Some doors have gas struts. This one has gas struts. So you may want to just think about, like, if you're a handy person, a DIYer, there may be some opportunity to get these things a little better by changing some stuff out. One thing that is weird up here, it's got two Bluetooth speakers. They are literally right next to each other. You're not getting stereo out of this thing. So, you'd expect if you wanted stereo, you'd want one here and one further back somewhere. These are right here, and they run off the TV. So, a couple of things. First of all, it's 120 volt only, so you've got to be hooked into a campsite, or a generator, I suppose, but I don't want to be blasting music over a generator. And turning on the TV to turn on these speakers is weird. It's not Bluetooth. The TV's Bluetooth, but these speakers are not. So this might be an easy upgrade item. You can get to the wiring under the master cabinet, and if you did want to upgrade that, you could probably just drop new speakers in there and get some more mileage out of it. It does have a fairly nice awning. The awning is not super strong in high wind. We do live in Colorado, and that's a thing for us. So that's kind of a concern. It is also a very high awning, but I guess that's kind of good in some ways. I mean, we don't use an awning every day just because the risk is it blows right off the camper. But it is a thing. It's nice to have on rainy days. A little further back here, there is a smaller storage compartment. If you look under the window here, we are right under the dinette. So there is no internal access to this compartment. And that is something we might actually change at some point. But for right now, it's just kind of a small little storage compartment. To be honest, it's not super well insulated, and that's kind of a concern for us. So I may throw some foam insulation in here, or maybe some Reflectix, just because this feels like an area that could be cold under your butt in the winter. But this is a nice place to store some outside items, things that you didn't want to shove in with all your chairs, like cooking implements and, marshmallow sticks and just kind of things like that. This is not a bad place to put that kind of stuff. I cannot open the main door. So a challenge with these doors, you've got this really, really nice stairway, right? We all love these secure steps. Unless you're parked next to somebody, in which case it's so big you can't open it. So fortunately, there's a rear entrance, and we can get in that way. But if you do park in a lot of tight conditions, particularly if you back in and you're worried about that rear door, that might be a concern for you. Now, coming back in here, oh, sorry, I forgot to unlock this. This is the stove, the outdoor stove. And I mean, in my opinion, it's kind of useless. It's pretty small. It's 2-burner. You really can't cook anything significant on it. And it is a stove rather than a grill. So I think that our plan is actually probably to pull it out and do something else with the storage space. But if you did want to use it, you do have a quick connect for your propane down here, so you are able to plug that in. And then, little other rough edges here. Look, you can see some insulation that's just kind of stuffed through this panel here and sticking out. That will wick moisture. Do not leave fiberglass insulation exposed like that. I'm going to have to cut that out and close it off. And then finally, you have a little bit of a fridge in here. And this is actually a little nicer than we expected. It does work pretty well. The one drawback to this fridge is you do have a lot of dead space above it that's kind of wasted or unused. And one of the things we thought we might do is maybe, put a shelf in there or something and be able to lock that down. One other thing that went wrong for us is the cover over the microwave vent ripped off immediately, literally on the drive home from the dealer. And we were about halfway home. And 2,000-mile trip, we were 1,000 miles into it. We weren't going back to the dealer. Of course, that was when we also noticed that the dealer, we're sure it was the dealer because it was not like this when we looked at it, but we were about halfway home and we noticed that the dealer had backed it in to apply some paint protection in one of their bays and damaged the ladder. So you can see these ladders are super fragile. This was probably backed into some type of like I-beam or something. They backed it in too far, and the ladder's actually ripping off the roof. So an early priority for me is to address that. And then finally back here, you've got a hitch. It's basically the most useless hitch in the world because it's mounted directly in the center and right under the stairs. So you really can't put a bike rack or a cargo carrier or anything like that in there without knowing that you're going to lose access to be able to get in the rear of the coach. So if you do want to be able to get in the rear of one of these campers, just kind of bear in mind that if you have something on there, you're going to have to pull it off. My plan is to put a hinged carrier on. I've been looking for a hinge system here, and they do make them. So my hope is that if I can get one of those, I'll be able to use that and get in and out. Finally, before we go in, a couple of comments here. I can't get up on the roof, obviously, because the ladder's damaged, but maybe in another video, I'll talk about my solar install and you'll be able to see that. I do have the Halo View camera mounted here with the Furrion adapter. It looks a little hokey. I'm not super thrilled with how it turned out. It's kind of like, not clean. There's a bunch of wires there, and I may try to, put a tube over those or something. It's kind of ugly. But it works fine, and it's better than the Furrion system. It's got better range because it has an RF transceiver box. And then finally, there is the friction hinge doors. So you'll see these on a lot of new campers. This one is incredibly stiff, and the kids have a really difficult time opening them. You can see it's so stiff that the hinge is actually rocking right here and bending the frame of the camper. So I expect that over time, I'm going to have to do something about that, either find a way to loosen the tension a little bit or do something, I don't know, because sooner or later that'll start damaging the camper. And then, just little glitchy things. This is popping out. So that's not ideal. Something's bending there. Who knows what? You get a new camper, you're going to run into stuff like this. Going to have to fix a project. The rear bathroom is great. This is a real nice thing for the kids. There's plenty of room in here. And you can see because storage outside is so limited, this is what storage is going to be your main issue. This is where I actually store the 50 amp cord. It comes with the cord. It does not come with the power protection, so make sure you get some of that. And here you can see one of the Oxygenics shower heads. Couldn't find a bronze one, but I got the bronze of everything else. And one other thing, just so you know, it comes with an outer shower curtain, but not an inner one. So if you're going to pick up the camper on your first day and you're planning on using the shower, make sure you get an inner vinyl shower liner because you need that thing, otherwise this soaks through. One thing I did learn, and you'll see going up into some other spots, the wallpaper is not adhered very well. We've had a couple of command hooks that we put up for towels pull the wallpaper off the wall. Like literally just bubble the adhesive straight out, and I can show you what that looks like. It's a hot mess. So be very cautious if you're doing any command hooks. I would say, the more traditional screw-in kind of 4-hook arrangements are probably a better option here. Our mirror was also falling off the wall when we got the camper, so that was a thing. There is a little bit of storage in here. It is not a lot of storage, but it's okay. And you're going to see a lot of sawdust. This camper is not dirty. It is almost brand new. We barely used it. That's ignore the penny. But that sawdust is just kind of, if you buy a new camper, you can expect that. That stuff's going to be falling out of your ceiling for weeks, and it certainly has been for ours. And then finally, there's a little back kind of storage nook. These things are very difficult to figure out what we want to put on them because they do have a little bit of a lip, but the shape makes it impossible to get any kind of basket. And you can't, like, stick a towel on that, so it's just kind of weird. Like, it's hard to figure out what would go there. And you can see the wood choices are not very high-end, so if this comes through on the video, let me see if I can get this to zoom in here. You can see it's got, like, some rough edges here, and just like where the wood was kind of repaired or something. It's hard to say exactly what was going on in there, but it's pretty low-end. It looks good from a distance. One other complaint that I have is that there are no door stops or magnetic door holders of any kind. If your camper is not perfectly level, this door will not stay open. It will just close on you all the time, and it's kind of annoying. Another thing that you can expect in some of these lower-end campers is we've got liners pulling away from the walls. We've got cheap caulking. You can see the caulk doesn't match the shower surround here, so it's kind of a yellow caulk here. And it's very noticeable. Like, it looks dirty, and this thing's brand new, so it's kind of disappointing. And, you know, you find just a lot of stuff like that, like just caulk that doesn't match, and it'll be all over the camper. Nothing a quick coat of paint couldn't fix, but you wish you didn't have to. Then again, it was only 50 grand, and this is why. Wow, is that a big room? And you'll see that in the review videos. You have a ton of space in here. Plenty of campers have a rear dinette in a bunkhouse. Not that many have a 4-seater rear dinette. Big problem with the rear dinette is also, they don't tell you this in the videos. They never give you any measurements. This is a shorter bed than the bed above it. So if you look at it, you've got room in there for the section of the dinette that forms the back of the chair. And because of that, you lose about 4 inches on either side, about 8 total inches of bed length, just because that's there. And that's a problem if you have somebody kind of potentially tall sleeping there. So it is really nice that this seats for, because you can sleep kind of slanted on it and get just another couple of inches. If your kids are 6 feet tall like mine, you're definitely going to want that. So, you know, little details, nothing to worry about, but little things that are kind of a pain. You know, the wallpaper here you can see is already peeling off the wall. It's just, the wallpaper in this Milestone is not great. I will say it looks nice from a distance, but it is not stuck on very well, and it's causing a ton of trouble. We've got it peeling in spots, it's discoloring in spots, and, you know, just kind of something to keep an eye out for. You can see a brand new camper here. Yeah, they when they cut the holes in these things, they don't cut them very well, and you can see the roof vent. 3 of the screws have fallen out of already, and there is styrofoam insulation falling down through the vent. Yeah. Another thing that's a little weird is, again, in this room, this is a room that sleeps 5, really. Like, potentially more, but you could sleep 5 because you have a bed, 2, 3, 4, and then that massive loft. And the loft is great. We love it. But you have 3 little nooks without doors, 1 small lower cabinet without shelves, and 1 small upper cabinet without shelves or a hanging rod for your storage for 5 kids. If you're a full-timer, this is a problem. All right, this is not an ideal situation. So I think we're looking at a couple of things. You can't make any of this wider because the 2 slides come in. But what you can do is when those slides come in, this area from here to that door is not filled with anything. It's just an empty aisle. So what we're talking about doing is getting one of those IKEA storage units, maybe the 4x4 or the 4x6, you know, the ones, the cube kind of shelving units, and putting it here against this door. And then when we're traveling, just rotating it around as part of our pack-up to right here. I mean, it wouldn't take 5 seconds to do that. And that might be a good way to add some storage to this room. I would definitely recommend thinking about that because it is really a challenge being able to store anything in here, unless you don't need quite as many beds, in which case you could definitely like build in or use one of the beds for that kind of thing. One last thing we've had a ton of trouble with, this ladder does not secure very well. Pops out for like no reason as you're traveling, because this ledge here, look, it doesn't even sit in there very well. This ledge is very small, but it doesn't actually have a foot on it. I don't know if this video is going to make this very clear, but this is just like a little slanted cut. So it's just a ramp, and this ladder can pop up and off that ramp. And if it does, and you don't realize it's happened, you can tear out your molding. You've got no way to stop it. You don't know it's happening until you hear the awful crunching. And yeah, this is a problem. This is a major complaint for us. So what we're talking about doing is, once I get this molding repaired, I'm going to put some type of safety strap across that so that that ladder can't pop out there while you're in transit. Definitely think about securing that in some way, because the way that it's included is not sufficient. All right, coming up forward, I know it sounds like a lot of complaints, but we do love the camper. So the kitchen counters are great. They're a little weird. I mean, I love the upper cabinets. I love how light they are. When you look at them up close, what doesn't come through in any of the demo videos is kind of how cheap the faces, the door inserts are, particularly this one. Like, it's not whitewashed. It just looks like cardboard, honestly. It looks like something straight out of Walmart. And it's a little weird because actually the rest of them look pretty good. Like, that panel's nice. It's just the 3-door insert. There are 4-door inserts right here that are my complaint. I think everything else looks really nice. The drawers are a little sticky and a little small, so you don't have a ton of storage in these things, and it's kind of weird because these cabinets have very big face frames. I don't understand why they did this. They could easily have oversized that because, yeah, there is some electrical back here, but those drawers are so shallow that you could totally have at least gotten an extra inch or two in these drawers, and particularly the bottom drawers could have been deeper. Another thing that you don't really have is any storage for like a trash can or anything. The area under the sink here, if I move this shoe rack out of the way, is very shallow, and there's this divider plate in here. So an easy win, again, if you're handy, is if you just pull this divider out. Let me see if my camera will pick up the darkness. No, it won't. Sorry about that. But there's some plumbing back there, but not too much else. You can see this divider isn't even really secured in there. So that would be an easy item to pull out, and maybe even put a shelf in. You'd be able to store some more things in it. We haven't been able to use our pot and pan rack yet because it's not attached in the back. I don't know if the video will pick this up, but the back there is wobbly. It's not screwed down to the floor of the camper, so that's a challenge. And then, yeah, if you look, the thing I'm planning on doing as my next thing is I have found a Reva shelf that is only 8.5 inches wide. This is a 9-inch gap. There's nothing behind there, just that wire. So if I can more or less match this molding and run a piece of trim right across here to kind of frame this out, I'm going to make the bottom section of this a pull-out trash can. Pull-out trash can would be like my #1 complaint for this kitchen. Storage is just very limited. You'll see in a minute, the pantry's awesome. But storage for anything else is just almost non-existent, and it's in really weird ways. Like, there's no place for shoes. There's no place to store coats or anything along those lines because they're just very, very small cabinets. So you walk in here and immediately you're tight on your daily, very active use items. Raincoat, shoes, umbrella, stuff like that. There is no place to put those things. In a lot of the campers, there tends to be some type of door or cabinet down here that opens up so you can access that space. But as we saw, that's used by a very small outside stove. So that's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, gee, maybe we should just close off that stove. It's useless anyway. We have a nice grill that stores better in the other compartment, and maybe we'll open this up and put a door in there and make some storage there, because that would surely be useful. We'd love a place to store shoes. We have a shoe rack, and we kind of put it here, but it's just not ideal. You have to take it down in transit. It's wobbly. I mean, it's not perfect. And, you know, again, with the storage, there's no under cabinet lighting, so that was another kind of disappointment here. What we did do is my wife found some of these kind of light up units, which it looks like we might have actually forgotten to charge. But we have some LED under cabinet lights, and those really help a lot. And there is plenty of storage above, I mean, for an RV. One thing that is a little bit of a complaint is that the space above these cabinets is sort of like dead, useless space. We'd love to be able to store something up there, like maybe blankets for the couch or, you know, just stuff along those lines. But the lip is not very deep. I don't know if I can see it with the camera, but it's about 1/4 of an inch for that molding, where, you know, typically with an RV, when you've got shelves, you have a very aggressive lip to be able to hold items. Like if you wanted to put bowls up there, that'd be a very dangerous place to do that in transit. So unless you were going to put up some type of peg rail or some other way to restrain them, I wouldn't plan on using that for storage. This does have fully ducted AC. The AC is in the main living area and ducts to these vents down here in the back. It's okay. It's not super effective, but it does work all right. It does keep the noise out of the rear bedrooms, which is kind of nice. And then, you know, the counters are pretty great. Our counters, there are 2 disappointments. One is these inserts are very fragile. You can see this one's already chipped. This came to us like this. We didn't chip this, word of honor. This was chipped when we got it. We didn't notice it in the walkthrough because from the top, you can see the top section is fine. It's only actually chipped on the bottom, so we just didn't notice when we did the walkthrough. And then finally, and this is a common complaint from my wife because she often is the one closing the sink, is that the faucet is mounted very oddly. All right, so typical RV faucet. The faucet has a hole for any last drips of water to come down into, right? And then you have this to be able to open this up. Now, the problem that you run into is that you need to be able to lift this. Watch what happens. Wait, what? How do I get it out? Well, I mean, you can get it out. You have to awkwardly tilt it this way and slide it out of the hole. Why didn't they mount this at 90 degrees here? Most other campers, the faucet handle is here, and that eliminates the problem. Why? Who knows? Just weird little, you know, bits and pieces that you need to think about. All right, so moving around, the fridge is just amazing. It does have one drawback. It can't run on propane. You have the umbilical cord. You must be hooked up to a campsite generator. This can run it off 12 volt, but the solar panel is such a joke that it is not going to hold the batteries up while this fridge is draining them down. So you've got maybe a day or two, or maybe while you're hooked up to your truck traveling, where you can leave this thing on. But while it's on, it is great. It has a ton of storage in it. I honestly think this is the best RV fridge we've ever owned, and we just love it. It's got 4 doors, so you're not wasting all your energy opening big doors every time. The doors have latches. It's easy for the kids to use, and so on. So we love this. It's not carpet, in case you're wondering. This is some type of like plastic material that kind of looks like carpet. It's a little bit textured, but it's not tufted, so it's easy to clean. It kind of just wipes right off. So far, we haven't stained it, and that's been fine. Pantry is huge, but also a little bit weird. There are 3 shelves in it, plus the floor, and that's great. But as you can see, there's a lot of dead space. The shelves are not adjustable. They are attached to the wall on these mounts here. And the spacing is just huge. So it's tempting to either overload them, which you don't want to do because they are very thin sheet material. You can see I can just flex it with my hand here. Just my fingers will flex it. So that's just like 16th inch Luan plywood there. It does have a center support, but other than that, the shelves are not strong. So, you know, you kind of look at this and you're like, God, you were so close, guys. Couldn't you have just gone the extra mile and just added one more shelf at a slightly narrower spacing? But, you know, if you're handy, again, these are all fixable problems. Finding this material could be a challenge, but you could probably find some stain that'll match it. So I will almost certainly be adding a shelf here and moving the middle and top shelves down to make room for one more. Then the other complaint in the main living area here is this dinette. It does not come through in the videos. I'm going to try to see if this will come through. You sit there, and the table is way up here. So it's not obvious, and I don't have anybody here to help me film, but you cannot sit comfortably at this table and eat. I am a full-grown adult, and my arms are up in the air trying to touch this dinette, and the dinette is not adjustable. You cannot move that table up and down. That's another head scratcher. It's one of those things where it's like, you were so close to making the perfect camper. Why is the dinette at such a weird height? My kids have to be on their knees. One of them is 12 and eats on her knees just to be able to sit at this dinette. So one of the projects I'm going to work on is cutting this pillar and that one over there and lowering this whole unit by, I would say at least 6 to 8 inches. There's also no storage under the dinette. When we were outside, if you may remember, there is a storage bay under there, not super well insulated. We may either close off that bay, or if we leave it open, we may insulate it one way or the other. This is the TV I was talking about. It is not a smart TV. It's billed as one, but if you think smart TV means Disney and Netflix and Hulu, Plex and Roku and stuff like that, then think again. What they mean is that this has several HDMI inputs. It's got Bluetooth, so if you turn it on, you can pair your phone and play music to it from your apps, and that can have 2 zones. So this TV actually controls the zones that go outside, and here you can see the wires that carry that through. So just kind of a thing to think about. It is something we're planning on upgrading. Another complaint that we have is that there's almost no switches. They've got this LCI OneControl, It's okay. It's not great. I like being able to put the jacks out and run the slides out while I'm standing outside the coach, because then I can make sure I'm not going to hit anything. That's kind of peace of mind. I hate, cannot even tell you how much I hate having to find my phone, run the app, unlock my phone, open the app, wait for the thing to load because it takes like 5 seconds to sync up, go to the home screen, find the lighting, and press a button to turn the ceiling lights on and off. What were you people thinking? Dumbest idea ever. Put a light switch in. You went the extra mile and you put a switch in for the fan? Why couldn't you put a switch in for the lights? Every other light in this coach has a switch except the main lights in the main kind of living area here. What were you people thinking? Well, I don't know. Maybe they weren't. These shelves are actually kind of useless. They have very, very shallow lips here. This is actually even shallower than the one above the cabinet there. So this is feels like about 3/16 maybe. So something to think about there. And actually, it's just started raining outside, so I'm just going to close my vent a little bit here because they don't include vent covers. So you need to think about that when you're doing this. It is nice having the switches. See, you need those switches in a hurry. You need an awning switch. If you live in a windy state in Colorado, all of the Midwest is a windy state, right? All of the western states, anywhere that you've got wind, you need an awning switch. You cannot be looking for your phone if the wind starts picking your awning up and threatening to rip it off the camper. You need to haul that thing in fast. This does not have an auto retract for wind. Keep that in mind. So haven't figured out how to address that yet. The couch is great. The Thomas pain, I still don't understand. You can't take those off. All 3 positions recline. We like that. Couch looks nice. We like that. It's got some kind of hokey cup holders that look good in review videos, but they're like super shabby. They're like almost made out of foam or something. I don't know what's going on with them. 2 positions have those, and they're okay. They catch a little bit. They're kind of okay. But you can't get the plastic off. This plastic here, which just looks like hotel, right? Or grandma's house with plastic on the furniture, is really hard to get off. It's like stitched into the fabric, and there doesn't seem to be any way to remove it cleanly. So that's something we're still figuring out. I mean, we don't want to keep it on there for the life. It's weird not having it in the middle. It's not for protection, because otherwise why wouldn't you put it in all 3 positions? So, I don't know. It's just one of those things. And we do really like a lot of the blinds and everything. These are kind of those blackout blinds that pull down to whatever position and then go soft up. The only one we don't like is this one here isn't mounted right. You can see the bracket is falling off and something's going on there. So I need to fix that one before we be able to use it. And that's a project that's coming up here. Coming up into the master bedroom and bathroom. This is tight. So I love the shower. I am 6 foot tall, and you can see we got the Oxygenics shower head in here. Definitely replace that. The shower heads it comes with are terrible. This bathroom's kind of a mix of good and bad. It's weird, like, okay, here's the weird. Light switch. Light switch. Light switch way up here. Light switch way down there. Why? I don't know. That's where they put it. You have a fairly decent counter, a fairly generous upper cabinet here. It's okay. There's a little bit of wasted space around the sides, but that's good for hooks and everything. Do not put command hooks on here because they will fall off. See this bubbling in here? That's where one of our command hooks was. That already fell off there, and I'm still trying to get the stuff to adhere back down. Shower's kind of great, but a little weird. There's kind of this nook over here that doesn't really make any sense. Like, you can't figure out why they didn't either just run the seat over or do something. And also this triple track here for the door catches and holds water, like with a fierce grab. It does not want to drain out very well. And I may try to open up these drainage holes here a little bit more and kind of dig them down into the tracks because I'm concerned that it's going to mildew, particularly if water is kind of held back over there. And then, the toilet's a toilet. There's nothing much to look at there, but it's tight going to the bathroom here. My knees hit this cabinet every single time. I am fairly tall, more leg than torso. And, that's a consideration. That said, the bedroom is pretty great. So the bedroom is just like heaven for us. It's got this really nice, like, wood look headboard. It's not wood, some kind of sticker, but it looks like wood, and that's good enough for us. It's huge. It's an RV King bed, not a full king, but an RV King, but you know what RV Kings are. And this doesn't come with it, but it has room for it. I can put a desk in here. So, a bit about me, I work remotely. And I don't necessarily work, like, we're not full-time RVers. We'd love to be, but it's just not our lives. But at the same time, I do have the ability to work remotely. And if we can travel, if we can use the RV and I can work from it, which I can from here, I just put a folding chair right down at that desk and that's my computer station, then that means we can travel to more places for more days. It means we can travel on a Thursday night and I can work on a Friday. It means we can come back on a Monday instead of a Sunday. And all of that together means we get just a little more time. Our weekends are less rushed, and we're able to do more stuff. That's a really big deal for us, and we're very, very happy to be able to do it. So this was a piece of desk material I picked up from Amazon. You can see I just cut some strips underneath, kind of just the same way you would mount anything, and I mounted those there. You can also see it's a work in progress. I have not yet routed the wires. I haven't put any trim on the back or anything. It's kind of basic right now. But yeah, I mean, just being able to put a slanted desk, and you know what? I may even put the shape of this up online if you want. I can sit down here. I can use a MacBook Pro. I have plenty of arm room. I can put my my writing pad over here and take notes and be in pretty good shape. So I really appreciate being able to do that. The layout of this room absolutely is required to be able to do that. And this has been great for me. And then just kind of coming around, I'm not going to show the closet because y'all know what closets look like. You can look at the review videos. There is kind of a useless space here where that door opens, but we actually have our dog crate that we keep here in the closet. So when our dog travels with us, he has a place to sleep. So the bedroom's been really great. One last comment. I may do one or two more comments if I think of them, but you will see this. You won't see that. That was me fishing this out. You will see WineGuard Connect 2.0 pre-wired. That's fantastic, right? Yeah, they don't mean the signal. They just mean the power. There's a little power wire shoved way up in the ceiling here. It's very difficult to get out. It took me like 10 minutes to find the thing. I had to use an endoscope because it was kind of poked way back over on the side here. And then I had to fish it out with a piece of wire. But if you're willing to go through that, you got 12 volts here. Whether you use it for WineGuard or not is up to you, but you got 12 volts in your ceiling that you can use for something. So just be aware, WineGuard Connect, it says 2.0, but this is just like the hydraulic landing gear. That doesn't mean you can actually just drop the thing in. This has the WineGuard Air 360 antenna on the roof, and that does not have the LTE antennas in it. So you would have to replace the roof antenna if you actually wanted to be able to use that WineGuard 2.0, that LTE functionality. So just because it's wired for it doesn't mean you're all set and ready to go. So thanks for watching, folks. I know this was kind of like a rant, and I hope you don't get too turned off by this camper. I wanted to make a counterpoint to kind of all the glowing reviews that you see and try to provide like a very realistic owner view of what you're getting. This is a $50,000 price point camper for its base config. And what do you get? You get a camper that will comfortably sleep 2 adults in a master bedroom with a king, with office space and a dedicated bathroom, along with a quad bunkhouse plus loft plus second full bath. I don't know of any other floor plan that does this. This is the only floor plan that has all of the things I just mentioned. If you need the things that I just mentioned, this is almost certainly the floor plan for you, and you just deal with the rest. If you have fewer kids or fewer needs, then maybe you can do something else. But if your needs are what I just listed, this is the camper for you. Enjoy!